Hi, I'm Opal Mitchell. I work for the Central Arkansas Library System and I work at the Nixon branch in Jacksonville. This is the Crafting with Opal program that I do on Thursday nights at 7, and tonight I kind of changed it up. I was supposed to do a project that was, what was the name of it? It's the, well, it's these little almost saran wrap type fabric covers that we were going to make for your bowls or other items out of beeswax. It was a wax fabric type craft, but I suggested to my boss to postpone and do this one next week because since we had all the snow this week and no one was able to come to the library to get supplies, and plus the library was not open because of all of the snow and everything. So tonight I'm going to do an easy project that most of you might be able to do anyway at home, because it's typically stuff that you might already have on hand. It's a microwavable, let's see, heating pad, yes. And you just need either some uncooked rice or uncooked beans or deer corn. If you ever buy deer corn for any reason, that's the one that I used the first time I've ever made one of these. But you can use rice and beans, the uncooked ones also of those. And that's what I'm going to use tonight. I'm going to use some rice for mine. But these are really handy. You can heat them up in the microwave after you've made them, and you can use them as a heating pad, or like if you have a sore neck or back or whatever, a heating pad in that way. Or you can heat it up, and this is my favorite thing to do when it's cold like it is outside. I'll heat mine up and put it at the foot of my bed and put my feet on it under the covers when I go to bed at night, because when it's cold it's a nice way to keep warm until you fall asleep. And I've also seen versions of this made quite a bit smaller, like little square pieces about that big, little almost beanbag shaped type ones that you can heat up and put in your jacket pockets. So if it's really cold outside and you want to have something warm in your pockets, you could make a smaller version of it like this. And some people will make these and put essential oils in the mixture. And for something like if they have a headache, they'll make it as one that they could put on their head, and with the essential oil, especially lavender, is supposed to help kind of with that. But anyway, there's different versions of this that you can make, and tonight I'm just going to make a simple heating pad size type one that you can use, like I said, for like if your neck is sore or your back is sore, you could use this to heat it up in the microwave for that type of purpose. So I'm going to get started. The measurements of what you'll need for your fabric is the actual part that's going to have the rice in it. I'm going to call it the pillow part of it. That you're going to have the rice in. That can be any type of fabric that you can heat up in the microwave, so any 100% cotton type fabric is fine. I'm also going to make a pillowcase for it, because that makes it where if you want to be able to wash it, you'll be able to wash the pillow cover part of it. And you can make different versions of the pillow cover for it once you make the actual bag itself. Tonight I'm going to do flannel fabric for the outside pillowcase part. You can do cotton if you want to. It doesn't really matter. Because that's a little bit warmer fabric, and just be sure it's 100% cotton, since you're going to be heating it up in the microwave. So the bag part is going to be a 17-inch by 17-inch square piece of fabric, and I've already cut that piece out on mine. And it's just regular, I just have some purple cotton fabric that I cut out. It's folded right now. But anyway, I just cut out a 17 by 17 square piece of that fabric. And now I'm getting ready to cut out the pillowcase part, which that one's going to be 22 inches by 19 inches, because we're going to, it's going to be more or less kind of like a pillowcase shape. And so I'm going to move my camera around a tiny bit so you can see. I figure you didn't need to see me doing both, cutting both of them out. Once you see how I do one, you'll understand how I cut out the other one. The way I cut out stuff is with my rotary cutter and my measuring ruler here, and whoops, something got knocked onto there, and my mat here that it's a self-healing mat type thing. So I'm going to make this one 19 by 22 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of mark this off a little bit. I'm going to, since this is a big piece of fabric, I am going to kind of cut one end of it, and then I'll kind of fix the other side here in a minute. So I'm marking that off about at the 19, a little past the 19-inch mark onto the side here. And I'm going to pull my fabric over. Oh, sorry. We've been getting a lot of like spam type phone calls today. That's probably nobody that we know. Alright, so this is going to be my 22-inch side, which I'm going to have to pull. Hey Zoe! One of my dogs put her paw on my leg here. Alright, I'm going to have to pull this up a little bit so I can get 22 inches. I am running out of space up here. Let's see. I will turn it around. I can just line it up like that. And oh wow, 22 inches is way down here, and y'all may not be able to. I'm going to have to move things around a bit for you to be able to see this. I'm going to back it up and then lift up my camera, because this is a big piece that I'm having to cut. It's going to lean forward a little bit. Oh well. Alright, so I know this is a straight edge. I'd cut it before. And I just line that straight edge up with it. And I need to cut all the way down to here to get 22 inches. See if I cut all the way, well, barely. And I got a couple of spots that didn't quite. There we go. Alrighty. So, I'm going to turn this fabric a little bit. Oh, there's another spot that didn't quite cut. I'll get it. Alright. I just want to get this cut off of my main piece here, and then I'll kind of fix it up a little bit. Because this is, I'm cutting it a little bit bigger than 22 by 19, so I can kind of trim it up a bit here in a minute. And it'll be a little bit easier to deal with once I get it, because this is a little bit longer than 19 inches, but oh, I am not left-handed, so when I do it this way, it always is awkward, and it moves on me when I do that. So it kind of messed up my cut a little bit. I'll straighten it up here in a minute. Let's see. This is so awkward. Let's see. See, if you don't put your hand on it, which I'm having trouble figuring out how I'm going to do that. Alright, let's do this kind of reverse. It's always shifting when I do that. That irritates me. Oh well. I'll square it up. If it didn't measure exactly, it's not like it's clothing, so it won't matter if it's not exactly those measurements. And it's not a quilt or anything like that. You have to have pretty exact measurements whenever you're doing quilts and so forth. Now that I got it cut away from my main big piece of fabric. It'll be a little bit easier. Alright, so, one of my other puppy dogs is in here. Alright, so I'll just leave it there until I can. Alright, so I'm going to fold this with the right sides together. And yeah, didn't get it. I know my top edge was a little off, so I'm going to fold this where I can see what I was doing. And I'm going to square up this a little bit so it will be a little more straight. And I'll line it up with my lines on my cutting board here. So I can straighten it up a little bit. Well, there we go. Lucy, my other dog, is in here moving her blanket around on the floor, right in my way. Okay, so I got that edge straightened. And then I'm going to straighten this edge. And what I'm doing is I'm lining up my ruler with the lines here to get it exactly straight. And making sure that my fabric is that's lined up this way is also straight. Oops. That's the bad thing about a rotary cutter is if you hit the button, it pops open again. I have to keep my hand away from that part. Almost got it all cut. There's that. And then I got to do the bottom because I measured it a little bit, this end a little bit longer than 19 originally, just trying to get a straight cut. So I'm going to line this up with the 19 mark on my cutting board here. Except I'm going to move it over one more because I don't want it that close to the edge of my cutting board when I'm cutting. So I'm going to line this up here. Make sure my fabric is lined up straight. There we go. Alright, so now I've got my 19 by 22 piece of fabric. Set that out of the way. And actually, I'm going to have to move all this stuff because I'm going to need my ironing board here in a minute to kind of iron out the fabric when I fold the edge of it. Move this, put this up out of the way. Okay, so now I've got two pieces of fabric. I've got one piece of cotton that's just a 17 by 17 that I cut out for the bag part. And it's a square shape, so however you fold it is fine. And this one we're going to end up it's like our pillow. So we're going to end up sewing it all the edges and leaving a little bit of a hole for pouring the rice into it, or to turn it right side out and then pour the rice into it. And then the other piece, we're going to, let's see here. That's my 19. Alright. Okay, so it's my 19, and then actually I need to fold it by, I want it the other direction, because it's 19 by 22 inches. So I folded it where I've got it, where this part folded this way is 22 inches. Because I want this to be the longer end, because I'm going to sew one side and then the other side, but I need to leave the opening on one end. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it over a couple of times, the raw edge, and sew it under. So that'll be the opening. This will be like the pillowcase part of it. So I'm going to go ahead. I've got some black thread, in which that'll work fine. This has got a lot of designs that's got black on it, and then that one is a dark color, so black thread will be fine on it too. So I'm going to go ahead and sew that part. And I would recommend, if you wanted to make like little square, small shaped pieces out of flannel, I would use flannel for it. If you wanted to have some small ones to heat up to put in your pockets of your coat to keep your hands warm, I would use flannel on those. I probably wouldn't bother with making little pillowcases for those unless you really wanted to. Okay, so I'll move all of this stuff around over here so you can get it near my sewing machine. And get my chair pulled up. So, and I really should have pinned my fabric, so I'm gonna very quickly do that, because I'm gonna sew this. This is something that's really simple to do, but you do want to, and flannel does stay together. It doesn't move around very much. It does tend to stay in place when you have it folded. But this will also help you remember what edges you're sewing, because you don't want to sew up one end of it initially, because that's going to be the opening that you're going to fold over and sew. And it's just going to end up being like a really simple pillowcase type shape. Alright, so I'm going to just start at one end, and I want to check my settings on my sewing machine before I get started and see what I have set. Let's see, I have it on a straight stitch. Okay, it seems like everything's pretty well set up for this. I am going to, let's see here, try to get closer without hitting the stand that the camera's on. I'm going to lower this a little bit more. Actually, line this up. So I'm going to just start on, you could start on either end, it doesn't really matter. Of the fabric, but this is the end that I'm going to leave open. All right, and just 1/4 of an inch inseam is fine for this. Oh, would help if I turned on my sewing machine. Wouldn't you know it? And you can make these pillowcases out of, like I said earlier, any type of cotton fabric. This is flannel, but you can do cotton, just plain old cotton, or even a fleece material if you want. Looks like that didn't quite get lined up, but that's okay. I'll trim it a little bit. I'm not coming all the way over to the edge because I noticed that my fabric, this piece was longer than the piece that's underneath there, so it's straight further over, but not right there. So. Okay, so there's that. Alrighty, and I'm going to cut off my excess thread. Now, okay, I'm trying to move this around where y'all can see. That ended up being, somehow my fabric shifted on me, but that's going to be the end I'm going to fold over anyway, so it's not a huge deal. And you just see I didn't get those straight either, but not a huge deal. As long as you make sure that you don't end up with a hole in it, you'll be all right. Let me just cut off the excess there, and then I'm going to cut my corner. That just makes it, when you turn it right side out, it keeps it from being a bulky corner. And I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Just cut it just a little bit, not a whole lot. I don't want to get too close to the edge there, because you don't want it to turn it right side out and it end up getting a hole. Alright, so we've got that part sewn, and I'm going to go ahead and get my other piece. We're going to leave a hole in this one to put the rice in it and to turn it right side out. So I'm just pinning one of my corners first. Let's see, did I get it? Make sure that it's straight before I start pinning it. And I'm going to leave the hole on one of the smaller ends, not the long end. So I'm going to use some, let's use a brightly colored pen. I'm going to use yellow as my indications of where I need to leave my hole. Actually, trying to think how hard or easy it would be. Actually, it's not really that big of a deal. I'll just leave this. No. This one's curling, so I'm going to sew this in. I'm going to leave the other end completely open and then just fold it and sew it shut. Because that won't, I mean, it's not like you're, I don't care if you can see a seam on it. So I'm going to go ahead and pin this, but I'm not going to pin the other end. I'll just leave it completely open. Come on, there we go. if my fabric shifted a little bit. And if you heard that squeaking, that was one of my dogs playing with a toy. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to leave this end open on this. It'll be easier just to fold it in and sew it closed. So I'm going to sew down this long end and then sew across here to close it. Alrighty. And I'm going to do the same seam, about 1/4 of an inch seam. Okay. Okay, so I'm almost to the end. And another thing I didn't mention with this project, we are also going to be sewing a section of it in the middle to keep all of the rice from like going to one end of the bag. I've seen some of them done this way and some of them not done this way. It just kind of depends on whose version of this that you've seen, because I've seen a lot of different ones. Okay, and I'm cutting my corners again. I noticed when I used to make these bags with deer corn, and with the deer corn you could kind of just fill them up and it didn't matter if it all went to one end or not. I'm going to turn this right side out because it would all settle where you wanted it to anyway. It didn't. It's a little bit heavier when you do it with the deer corn. With the rice, it tends to not, like if you want to use less rice, maybe you don't have as much to work. My dog's coming over to smell. I'm turning it right side out and she was coming over to smell of what I was doing. So I'm going to get some little things that will turn my corners for me. My sister had made me some, or had gotten some made for me that had deer corn in it, and I like them without having it being sewn down the middle to kind of keep it all from going to one end, because there's so much deer corn in it, it doesn't matter. But I noticed when I found a pattern for this that had rice in it, they did go ahead and like fill it with rice and then sewed a section to keep it from going all the way to the end. And a friend of mine asked me if I would make some like that for her. So what I'm going to do is I am going to fill it with some rice. I don't have a measuring cup with me, but they say to do about a cup of rice here and then sew a seam down to hold it in that little section. Then put some more, like another cup of rice in there and sew a seam, and then another cup and do another little seam to keep it in those sections. So since I don't have something to help me measure that right now. I'm going to just pour some in there and try to eyeball it and see if I got it about right. So, well, I want to leave my camera over here instead of moving everything around so much. I'm just going to bring my rice over here. I have a big container of rice. I bought it. Best way if you're going to do a lot of projects like this with rice in it, go to like somewhere like a big box store, like a Sam's Club or something that sells it in bulk. And you can usually get a better price on it by buying it from a place like that. Now, if you're going to do the deer corn is going to be at the feed stores. Sometimes you find them at Walmart. It just kind of depends. Okay. I don't have a measuring cup, I have an old cup. So that's more than a cup, so I'm going to pour and kind of eyeball it. That looks about like a cup. So I'm going to pour that in there and see how it fills out. If I don't like how it fills out in the bottom, if I think I need a little bit more, I will. Okay. I usually just kind of move it around a little bit to see. And I was going to do it right about there. That's pretty good. I might do a little bit more. Alright, and this, and I guess if I wanted to be more exact, I could have measured this off, like put marks on it. Let's see. Trying to figure out. Well, I guess I could try to measure it off so I wouldn't have to think so much about it. So, alright, so here's my big tape measure. I've got my blue water-soluble pen, and this is going to measure, it's going to measure almost 17 inches because it started out being 17 by 17. I'm going to be closing that end, so let's see, how many marks did I want to do here? I wanted to do, that's 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, the 5 marks I guess would be good. Well, that's 5, 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna do, because that's not quite. I'm gonna do it just a little past the 5 mark, since it's about 16 inches is what I'm gonna do about 5 and 1/4. So right there and right there. And this is in a weird spot for me to be laying this because this is not going to go all the way across. I guess I'll have to turn it the other direction. And this is not going to be exact. I think I did it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I came about halfway point, and then I did okay. Probably should have, no, I did not measure that right. Because I went the opposite direction. Alright, so oh, I didn't have it to the end of that. That makes a difference. And okay, so 1, 2, 3. Alright, see, I was off by a little bit. I'm just going to mark that across, and I'll use that as a line to sew. And I'm going to try to make my rice go a little more to the end of the bag, so it would be a little bit easier to flatten out my fabric. So that's where I will sew my lines across. So let me move this back over here. And I'm going to do a little bit of pinning to help with my fabric not moving so much when, especially with the rice in there. So I'm just trying to flatten out my fabric as much as possible. I'm kind of holding it up while I'm doing that to try to make sure. Alright, so it's going to help a little bit. And want to make sure that the rice does not interfere with the sewing part. So that's going to be a challenge right there. Because it's going to drag. Actually, I'm going to take this part off a little bit. Start with that in there. And I can feel the rice falling over on the bottom section here, which I didn't want that, because I don't want to sew over any of the rice. That's actually the hardest part. Which do you prefer, rice or corn? I kind of like the corn, but I think that's because that's how I started out. The ones that my sister gave me had the deer corn in it. I think I'm just kind of used to it, and it's easier to deal with. I've had other people that really like their rice, and I think the corn, if you want to add essential oils to it, I think the rice does a little bit better with the adding essential oils to it. I'm not sure how I've never had a corn one with that. Now, if I was going to be making the little ones to put in your jacket pockets to warm up, when you go outside, I would probably put rice in those because it wouldn't be as heavy as the corn. But as far as the big bags, I think I like the corn. And I've never tried the beans, so I'm not really sure how well the beans do. Yeah, I got all kinds of little pieces of rice. So I'm just going to hold it up here and kind of make sure that I'm going to try really hard not to let the rice get in the way. I'm going to just kind of feel. If some comes over, not a huge deal. As long as the majority of it stays on the end there. Oh wow, whole section of it got in there. I should have done a little bit better job with that. I didn't realize so much of it would come over. But I guess because the way my bag moved on me while I was doing this. I was doing pretty good here. I don't know that it would just dull your needle a little bit, I think, but I don't think it would be a huge deal if you sewed over some rice. I think I got most of it. Maybe I put a little too much rice in it. Oopsie. It's not moving, is it? Is it because there's some rice in there? I think there is. I don't remember. I really do believe I put too much rice in it. I was really trying to. Okay, I'm going to put my needle down in there so I can lift my foot up. Oh, that would stop it from going over it. Is it? Yeah, because the foot would hit the rice and keep the fabric from moving. Okay, that's probably what's going on. Yeah, a little less rice. I still feel a whole lot of rice over here. I'm going to move that needle just because it's in the way. I probably messed this up all kinds of ways by putting too much rice in it. I probably should have stayed with that first amount that I did. That seemed like a good amount, but I was like, oh no, I want a little bit more. It seems like it needs some more in there. Okay, let's put the needle in there. Move the corn out of the way, or rice. Probably should have just undid this and took some of the rice out. But I'm stubborn. I think I'm hitting pieces of rice here and there. Okay, and then we're gonna back up. Alright, so I'm definitely not going to put as much rice in the next section because that caused all kinds of problems. So less rice and less problems that way, right? Alright, so let's try the next section. And I'm going to pin my edges first before I start putting the rice in there, so it'll be a little less difficulties, hopefully. I'm just pinning on either side of where my mark is. The other part will be much easier of just doing the pillowcase for it. Alright, so I just pinned it, and now I'm going to try to measure a little less rice this time. I think about a cup would be just fine. And that's what I'm judging is about a cup. It'll be less aggravation this way. I don't think I'll have as much movement of the rice that way. Alright, so let's come back over here, and hopefully I won't have as much trouble sewing this edge. Well, I guess this is not an edge, this is a section. And that's the thing, it is having the rice in there does make it difficult to get up onto the sewing area. And so I'm trying which I never like to pull my fabric from the back side, but I'm just trying, because you want your threads to stay behind your sewing foot, but I'm trying to maneuver this where the rice doesn't fall down. Let's make sure my threads are where they're supposed to be. Okay, so that needs to be back behind there, and that needs to be back behind there too. Okay. Alright, so let's move that thread and pull on our threads a little bit to make sure they're nice and tight. Trying to keep a hold of this where the rice does not get up in here, which it already is a little bit. Trying to do a much better job at keeping the rice out of the sewing area, which it seems to still be getting in there just a little bit. And then back at my stitches, just a couple, because I don't have room to do more than a couple. Okay. Scoot that rice, lift up my fabric, and try to scoot it. I'm using my fingers to kind of shift that rice out of the way. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move that pin because it's going to fall off anyway. And I'm going to put my needle down into my fabric so I can lift my foot up to get that rice out of the way. And I'm not pushing my fabric through, I'm still letting it pull the fabric through. I'm just kind of holding on to it to keep the weight of the rice from pulling on it so much. There's some that still got up underneath there again. Okay. Yeah, I just used a little too much rice last time. And I'm not hitting my line exactly, but that's okay. I just did the line to get as straight of a line as possible. But this is going to be inside of your pillowcase, so that's not a huge deal if you get it completely straight or not. So I'm going to cut this thread loose. And yeah, I guess I could have used coordinating threads that was purple, like my purple bag, but it's going to be inside the pillowcase, so you're really not going to see it. I'm just cutting off my little threads here. And so this last part is going to be about like the other ones. Oops, just dropped my scissors on the floor. So those are my, I guess you could kind of tell that I've got a little more corn or rice in that one as I did the other one. So I'm going to put some more corn in there. I'm going to try to measure it about a cup of rice like I did the other ones. Okay. This one will be a little more difficult just because it's at the very end. And I'm going to move this big box of rice out of the way, or container of rice. Alright, with this part, it would probably be ideal if I folded it inwards and ironed down the edges. And I probably should have done that before I put the rice in there to make it a little more easier for me. Or I could just make it more difficult on myself. Now, when folding this, I like to fold the seams open like that before I fold it down. A little less bulk whenever you fold it that way. So I'm folding that edge first, and I'm going to pin it. And then I'm just going to come across, folding my edges down. I may pin this a little more often than I normally would. Just because there's going to be rice trying to escape from it as I'm sewing it. Usually I would have a much bigger space in between my pins. And unlike the way I'm doing it, I would recommend before putting that last bit of rice in there to fold this area downwards, which I think I'm having too much trouble trying to do it this way. I think I'm going to do that because I'm going to be fighting it doing this. So I'm just going to get my cup and pour my rice into it. Okay, so I'm going to go to my ironing board. I just didn't want to have to move the camera around so much, but oh well. This will be a better way to do it. So we'll get that. I'll keep my rice off to the side there. And I need to also fold down my pillowcase area and iron it down too. So I'm going to get a different, smaller tape measure to bring over here. Alright, so we're going to fold this in. And I'm going to do it to a point where, let's see, about I don't know, what is that? That's about a 1/2 inch, folded in by about a 1/2 inch. And get it, the whole, all the way across folded like that. So you have a straight edge. I was looking at it from an angle, so it wasn't quite looking straight. Okay, so once you get that folded, just take your iron I don't know if mine's still heated up. It may have turned off for a little bit. I'm trying to feel, yeah, it wasn't that warm, so let me wait on it to heat up just a tad. So once you get this edge folded down, when you go to pin it with the rice in there, it'll be a lot easier. Yeah. And if it was warm enough to steam it up really good, that would be good. Okay, so that edge is, now it's going to stay folded as you're pinning it and putting the rice in it. And also what I would do is before you start putting the rice in there, I would start pinning down the edges and leave a hole for you to pour the rice in towards the middle. Yeah, that way you can have a little bit of a hole. And I have, from that corn one I did, I just took a old, oh, what is this? Some paper that I just made a little funnel out of it, and then just use the funnel to pour the rice in there. Oops. Not working real great over here because my cup is a little bit bigger than my funnel. Plus I couldn't see what I was doing real well. Try this again. I'm still getting it on my ironing board. I guess what you could do is you could lay like a paper or something, or a piece of fabric underneath it while you're pouring it, and that way when you got done, you could pick that up and pour it in there. Oops. Ah, it went out too fast. Didn't have a good control over that. Okay, almost done here. And you have to kind of shake it a little bit to make the rice fall down in there too, from the funnel. Like my funnel is filling up, but not going down in there, so you have to stop and shake it. It's almost filled up again. And I only have just a tiny bit left. Okay. Okay, there we go. So now I got my rice in there, and you can tell having it pinned up ahead of time and also having ironed it down a little bit has helped with it not gapping a whole lot. And so, going to alright, so I got my edge pinned, and I'm thinking about pinning it even more because of it being, it's going to be pulled on while I'm sewing it because of the weight of the rice. Sorry if my elbow is in the way. I'm doing this at an awkward angle. Alright, it might be pinned good. Good enough. Alright, so let's go ahead and, well, I'm going to move this over to the sewing machine. But then I need a few pins to do my pillowcase. Alright, so I'll need my iron again for this. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before on the other one. I'm going to kind of open up my seams on the edge here for when I'm folding it, so I can fold it down with an open seam. Like I said, it does help with it not being as bulky of an edge if you do that. So I'm folding it down about 1 inch, and then I'm going to iron that, and then I'm going to fold it again. Open up my seam a little bit more down the edge here for the next fold. But you notice I use a lot of Nightmare Before Christmas fabric, but I am a big fan of Nightmare Before Christmas, so I have a lot of that type of fabric laying around whenever I'm in the stores and I notice that they have a new pattern of Nightmare Before Christmas fabric. I'll usually pick it up if I can, because eventually I'd like to, with all the different kinds that I have, I'd like to make a big quilt for my bed out of Nightmare Before Christmas fabric. This is some flannel Nightmare Before Christmas fabric. They didn't carry it in the store. I noticed they had it online last year or the year before. I think it was the year before. Or no, maybe it was last year. Because I'd made a baby blanket out of it for a neighbor. Alright, so now I'm just going to sew down my edge and for that. So those are the last two parts of this project. Is sewing the bag closed and then sewing the end of the pillowcase. Oh, my whole camera just kind of fell forward. That was fun. Let's try to fix that. Let's see. Tighten that up a little bit. Alrighty. Hope everybody's making it okay in this bad weather. It's been kind of miserable being stuck at home. I mean, the snow's kind of pretty, but after a while you get tired of not being able to go anywhere. Okay, I think I'm going to do the hard part first. So I'm just going to sew this straight across to sew it closed. And I'm going to try to do at least 1/4 of an inch seam. I have to be really careful since I've got so many pins in here not to run over any of my pins, because I'm trying to sew close to them so maybe no rice comes out. I think my fabric's getting pulled a little bit from the weight of this, so I'm going to try to shift it a little bit. I am researching sewing machines right now because I'd like to buy a little bit nicer one for my birthday in March, and hadn't quite been able to narrow it down to what brand I would like. I'd like a little bit more heavier duty sewing machine. I'm going to shift some more of this rice down past where I've already sewn to make it a little bit easier. Just because it's getting kind of tight. But I found an actual heavy-duty sewing machine made by Brother, which I was kind of surprised I didn't know they made any. That rice, it's still trying to get out of here. Let's see here. Oh, it's trying to get in the way there. Yep, I feel some more pieces trying to slide over. Oh, I just now noticed that Paula asked me, what do I have now? I do have a Brother right now. This one is a Brother XL3750. I don't know what that means exactly, but it was, it's a kind of a basic model. It does a good job, but I do struggle with different really thick fabrics at times with it. I have done a quilt with this machine, because it had a quilt, a walking foot with it, and a little extension table that you can attach to it when you're doing quilts. But this is kind of a baseline sewing machine, a starter one. That's why I bought it, because I was a beginner whenever I bought it, and I didn't want anything fancy because I didn't know if I would do anything beyond basic sewing, or if I would continue to sew. You know, if that would be something that I would continue to do a lot of. But I have been doing quite a bit. I have found, so I kind of want to upgrade a little bit, get something a little bit nicer. I don't want to spend a lot of money on another machine, but I would like to have a little bit more, like I said, heavy duty, that can do thicker projects with multiple layers and so forth. Which I found, the Brother one I ran across when I was looking for another machine. This guy did and it's cool, there's a guy that has a video that he does a lot of sewing, he does cosplay and different things like that, and he got sent this machine to try out, and he's like, I've never done this before. He said, I'm going to run this through the, not through the ringer, but he said, I'm going to really run it to see what it's capable of, because it says that it's a heavy duty machine. And he said, so let's see what we can do with it. And he did some really cool demos with it, where he took some duct fabric. It's supposed to be really thick fabric, and he tried to see how many layers he could do with it before the machine couldn't handle it anymore. And he was able to do 12 layers of duct fabric, I think it was, before it even slowed down. And he said, honestly, he said, I think it would have kept going if I'd switched to a better thread, because he was using just a basic thread, and like what I've got on this machine right now. And it even went through, he did leather, and it went through 4 layers of leather. And the same thing happened, like the thread broke on the 4th layer, and he was like, it might have kept going if I'd had a better thread in the machine. So it's like, that's pretty cool. The only drawback I have to that machine is that it's not all like this machine. I consider it more mechanical. I don't have any LED displays, for changing. It's all like knobs and stuff that you have to make changes for any of the different stitches that you're doing. The one that he had, it had a digital display that you hit the buttons to change the different stitches that you were doing. So it had a little bit of electronics involved in it, and I've always kind of been hesitant to get the ones with the more electronics in it because it just makes me go, well, you know, if something like that goes bad on it, then you have to buy new electronics to fix it. It can't be as easily fixed. I don't know. I don't know if that's just a weird way of thinking. They may be fine and they may do great, you know, even with the electronics in it. But I just know I always hesitate to buy something with a lot of, you know, electronics involved with it because you're like, well, if that goes out, then you're gonna have to. But then again, I guess any other machine, if I had problems with it, I would have to take it to someone that worked on machines. So I don't know. I'm up in the air on that one right now. Okay, so there's my pillowcase. I'm gonna turn it right side out, and I already put up my other corner turner. Let me turn it right side out with the corners here. Okay. And I like these corn bags and rice bags. Whenever you're microwaving them to heat them up, the corn bag, I know they always said to do them for 3 minutes. The rice, I don't believe you have to do them as long to heat them up, but a lot of times it depends on your microwave on how much, you know, how long you leave them in the microwave to heat them up. So I would say do a couple of minutes, see how it feels. If it's not heated up enough, then do it another minute. Just, it depends on what kind of machine you have. Okay, so a microwave machine, that is. Alright, so I'm going to put this inside my pillowcase. And if you don't do the sections, then the stuff does have a habit of going all to one end. If you do the different little sections, then it'll stay a little more evenly distributed. And I made my bag the pillowcase for the bag quite a, you know, several inches big, so it's quite a bit bigger than the bag.